So let's just sit together now for 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so let's open our eyes and come back to the screen. Welcome to Shanti. So I'd like to continue with the language of silence, actually. So if I think back to my time with Punjaji, I was there about 4.5 years, going to his meetings regularly, although not every day. He had this amazing power or intuition, you could say, that people would write him a question. You had to write your question in a letter. So already maybe the night before, somebody would write to him, very often telling some part of their life story, maybe some issue, some problem. Maybe they just had a question. I don't know, different things. And so by the time Papaji would read their letter and call the person, some time had gone by. And I was fortunate at one period to sit very close to him every day in such a position I could see the face of the person that came and sat in front of Papaji. Because normally if you sat in the meeting, you would only see the back of that person. And so I could see that Papaji was not really answering the letters, the questions that were written. But in fact, in the time it took somebody to stand up in the room and walk through the crowded room and sit in front of him, in that period, which wasn't nothing, it took a moment or two, Papaji was able to kind of energetically read that person. And so time and again, I saw him talking to the person that he saw now in front of him and not being so much interested by the problem, the question, whatever it was that was written in the letter. Sometimes these letters went on for several pages. And there was therefore in these letters, there was an enormous kind of request. Can you please help me? This is my problem. Can you please help me? And of course, every time what Papaji was able to do to many of these people was that when they sat down in front of him and they started having a face-to-face meeting, an energetic meeting, he was able to take the person's mind, which mostly would have been in the past, in something that had happened before that they wanted help with. Some people, of course, they had some fears about the future. So he could see this. He could see that people actually absolutely identified in their minds with the past mostly, or some of them in the future. And so step by step, using very simple language, what is your country? Where do you live? Very simple sort of things, nothing very sophisticated, you could say. He would bring these people into a situation where they became present. They just became present. And of course, when you become present and you're really there in the now, and you're not in the past, and you're not in the future, and you're just present, then actually the mind stops. There is none of this constant agitation of thinking. And you come to silence. You come absolutely to silence. And he had this enormous power to bring people to silence. It was extraordinary because often there would be, anything up to 100 people sitting there behind that person, and that person was sitting there, and he was able to bring them suddenly to a moment when all their problems, all their sufferings, all their story would completely disappear. And very often they would laugh. They just laugh suddenly. For no obvious reason, they would just laugh. And they would laugh because they realized suddenly in a moment that everything was fine. There was nothing to be anxious. You know, I'm supposed to be talking about anxiety now. So there was nothing to be anxious. There was nothing to have fear about. And they suddenly could just see this for themselves. They weren't being told something by Papaji. He'd managed to step by step. It would take some time, maybe 20 minutes. It would take some time, but he was able to bring them so that it just stopped. And then very often when it stopped, the person would find themselves going down, feeling in their heart, and probably even feeling deeper than that. So this was very, very beautiful to watch. People would suddenly, poof, like the sunrise, you know, on their face. They'd suddenly go from full of anxiety, you could say, on their face when they first arrived. Maybe they're a bit nervous also to come and sit in front of him, what's going to happen. And all this tension would completely disappear. And in some cases, this laughter would become so infectious that the whole meeting would be laughing. We'd all be rolling around on the floor, in fact. And then Papaji very often would bring the person to sit next to him, and the kind of comedy show would just go on for, you know, it would be completely absurd. It would be for no reason, you can say. So this was happening to many, many people, actually. But what I came to realize, because I was there for quite a long time, was that for most people, it didn't really last. So they had a glimpse, a very powerful glimpse, but it didn't really last. And I asked myself many times, you know, why was that? And now, having, you know, been sharing for many years in Europe, living in a community, I've come to see that it's actually very, very difficult for it to really cut the roots of the mind, of the identification with the mind. We have to really cut it. Otherwise, unfortunately, you know, it's like in a garden. If you don't keep the garden well turned over, the weeds grow up again. The weeds grow up again. And so this language of silence is pointing to something. It's not suggesting some kind of practice. It's suggesting that we should become self-aware, just to watch. We have to watch, you see, because what is taking us away from our own true nature all the time is that we get caught up in the moment with some sort of mindy stuff, usually from the past, occasionally from the future. But anyway, we find it's very difficult to be present. And most of us have had experience of true presence. I think most of the guys that I can see today, I mean, you've had many moments of pure presence. And in these moments, you got a very strong glimpse. And you got a glimpse of what? You got a glimpse of your true nature. And this was probably very, very touching. And you haven't been able to forget that. And probably for many of you, the reason you're in this weekend is because of that. So this morning I was mentioning that there were three great teachers of Advaita in the last time, in the last period. One was Punjaji, Papaji, one was Ramana Maharshi, and the other one is Nazata Datta. And I would like this afternoon a little bit to talk about him. And I'd like to maybe start by reading something. So many of you have probably heard of his famous book, I Am That. I Am That. So this book is a kind of spiritual classic, but if you try to read it, it's not so easy to understand, in fact. And just recently, out of the blue, out of the internet, I often get things sent to me by different friends. I got a very intimate diary, a 5-year diary from somebody called Jean Dunn. Jean Dunn. So this was an American woman who had come to Tiruvannamalai and was living close by the ashram, was involved with Ramana Maharshi, and she went to visit Nisargadatta. Many people in those days would go from Arunachal, they would go and visit Nisargadatta in Bombay. Quite a long journey in those days. And so she did this, and on her first visit, she seriously fell in love with Nisargadatta. She had a very strong connection, and she continued to visit him over the next 5 years until he passed away. I think it was in 1982. He had throat cancer. And what came to me through the internet a week or so ago was a diary that she wrote of these 5 years. So I have the text in front of me. So this diary is partly Nisargadatta's teachings, and it's partly the kind of daily, weekly, monthly program that this woman was following for 5 years. I can highly recommend it, and if anybody would like to get a copy, let Radha know, and we will email you a copy of this. It's about 120 pages. It has been printed, but on Amazon now it says out of print. So I can send it to you as a PDF, and you can look through it. It's very, very touching, because she was obviously very authentic in her search. And she would go back to Ramana Ashram. She had some sort of connection to Ganeshan, our friend Ganeshan, who was the nephew of Ramana Maharshi. She talks about Ganeshan. And she became very, very close to him. In fact, she produced 2 books or 3 books of his teachings in those years, in those 5 years. I think they were published maybe after he left his body. And on the last evening of his life, he'd been very close to death for some time. And so for those close people like her, they never knew when they left in the evening if he would still be there in the morning. And in fact, on his last night, she had actually left the house thinking that, he was kind of better. And he had called her back and given her a box of chocolates. And that, in fact, was his last night. So he had some premonition, I think, that he was going to go that night. And just before that, earlier that same evening, so on his last evening in his satsang, he particularly singled her out and how can I say, and particularly honored the fact that she was so devoted to him. He particularly singled out the devotion, the aspect of devotion, which is something we don't talk about very often because it's a bit difficult to talk about, and not so, in a way, appreciated here in the West, because devotion smacks of, kind of giving yourself to somebody. But anyway, he particularly singled her out for the devotional nature of her caring towards him, and also said to her that, in his opinion, she was self-realized. So this was a very beautiful moment for her, and particularly as later she discovered that that was his last satsang, actually. So this is clearly a remarkable woman, and I'm in the process of getting those books because I've never seen them before, and I'm hoping that she's able to, how can I say, portray his teachings a bit more easily than you can find in I'm That. Jean Dunn. Anyway, I'd like to read something here. So she had asked him, I think this was about 4 years before he left his body, on one of her earlier visits. I had asked how to purify the mind, and was told to remember all that I hear from Maharaj, and the mind will become purified. The idea is to let everything happen as it will. Do what you want. Let ideas come, but always remember, I have nothing to do with all this. I am pure consciousness. Gradually, by disassociating oneself from all that the mind has accepted as real, the reality is beyond this. It is pure awareness, perfection, happiness, bliss. So I read that again. Always remember. So this remembering is what I'm calling awareness. I mean, we always have some problem because every teacher uses different words, and it's easy to think that somehow this is a different teaching. But when he says remember, I'm saying be aware, bring your awareness. I have nothing to do with all this. I am pure consciousness. So what he means by that, instead of allowing yourself to get caught up in the identification with this person, this I, my life, I'm doing my life, all that stuff, because we've got this identification with being somebody, instead of being constantly giving energy into that, right? Then you remind yourself constantly, I am pure awareness. I'm pure consciousness. I'm pure consciousness. Gradually, by dissociating oneself from all that the mind has accepted as real, right? So unfortunately, you know, over the years, we've completely been conditioned that we are some kind of separate somebody. We have a name, we have a gender, we have this, we have that. This is my life. And we absolutely believe that. It's a very serious business for many of us, very serious. And even though we've had glimpses, even though maybe through our spiritual work, we've come into a deep silence, we keep forgetting. It's really interesting how difficult it is. We keep forgetting, and we get again hooked up with this fantasy, you can say, which we completely believe. We completely believe this fantasy about ourselves. So he's saying that as we dissociate ourselves from the mind, what the mind has accepted, what the mind has created, by dissociating ourselves, then we come to the pure I am consciousness. Will shine forth, will shine forth. And then he's saying the reality is beyond this. So there's actually one more one more step. It is pure awareness, perfection, happiness, bliss. And this is your true nature. And this true nature is actually always there. So this morning when we started, we sat quietly for some time. And many of you were very quickly coming to a silent place. So this possibility of coming to the pure consciousness is absolutely available now, right now, this moment. You don't have to do anything. It doesn't take years. It does take years for most people because, unfortunately, it's actually not easy at all to have enough awareness to stop ourselves getting completely identified with our idea of ourselves that, you know, I'm doing my life, this is my life, and so on. This character, to stop ourselves getting caught up with that. I want to share something which I slightly hesitate to share, but you know, as I'm living in a community, naturally with those people in the community, I have a great respect for the fact that they have come to some kind of decision in their life where it's very important for them, that they really want to be free. They really want to come to the pure consciousness. And for that, they're ready to change their life in a drastic way, come and live in a community with a teacher. And so anyway, I've been living in that way for the last 16 years, and I have to greatly admire these people. And at the same time, in the last probably 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years, we've had a series of people having very strong glimpses, very, you know, very open glimpses, very powerful, lot of crazy laughter and a lot of bliss inside and so on. And at the same time, I've seen how, unfortunately, these people mostly get caught up again. So I decided to do a little experiment recently. This was actually only 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I took one of the people in the community who's had a lot of glimpses, and I gave this person some LSD. Not a lot of LSD. It was enough to make things very intense and very focused, but not enough to kind of become crazy. And I was sitting there with this person. I didn't take LSD, but I was just there. And we tried to see together what was going to happen. And it was very, very interesting because actually what happened was that gradually as the LSD became kind of active, we came together in a tremendous bond of love. There was really a very beautiful love field. It was impersonal. It was not I love you and you love me and all this stuff. It was just a kind of energetic field appeared there. And I realized that this person actually, as this was happening, I realized this person was very present and hardly anything going on in the mind. And so we just kind of sat there in this beautiful energy for some time. I don't know the time really, because that's not really, time doesn't really work in that situation. But probably at least somewhere between 1 or 2 hours, it was like that. And all the time I was amazed to see that this person was very, very present. And I thought, wow, this is really, we're really doing well here together. And then we were talking as we went along. We were also sharing together. this or that, you know, something came up, we would talk a little bit about it, but, and then let it go again. So it was quite conscious, I would say. But then after something like, let's say, an hour and a half, I noticed that it became more difficult to stay present. And, you know, some kind of thought would be there. And this thought was preventing her to come back to be just there present. And this increased. So as the effect of the LSD kind of wasn't so strong anymore, it became extremely difficult to stay just present. So gradually the connection that happened, this kind of energetic love, you can say, that was happening there, gradually this kind of, how can you say, a bit broke down, you could say. There was less easy flow of this energy. And gradually, as the time wore on, of course, then the mind came more and more back, and then the presence was less and less. And so when we did a sharing, I think the next day we did a sharing together, it became very clear how difficult it actually is to have enough strength of awareness to stay present. But when you can stay present, then, you know, you come into this amazingly deep space, and you can say, actually, then only love is there. So that's a little bit of a kind of secret of the inner workings of our community, or of the way John David works. I'm not doing that very often, but occasionally. So perhaps somebody would like to ask something or to share something.
Govinda?
Okay, can you hear me? Am I online?
Yes, we hear you. We don't see you yet.
Very good. A lot of what you said was very touching for me, and it opened up a space inside. And when I'm out doing my own stuff and working, I try to use my mind to remember not to go into any concept, or just to remember, just to tell myself that it's all good. But it doesn't work in the way when you say it to me, because there is a sense that you really, really know it. And this.
But you have. I mean, I'm sorry, Govinda, but I mean, I can see you're very sincere, you know, and you've been in our community quite a while, so I know you're very sincere. But if you look at what you're saying, you're doing what you were saying this morning, you know. You're completely identified with Govinda, and Govinda is doing this, and he's trying to use his mind to blah, blah, blah. Doesn't work, you see. Doesn't work. You can't do anything in one way. And the awareness that I'm talking about is not really the mind as such.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have that. Yeah, that's right. I get lost.
So your mind, when you're out in the supermarket or wherever you're working now, factory, I think you're working now. I mean, using your mind to control your mind is not going to ever work for you. So somehow that's the wrong direction. You get no good results with that.
Yeah.
Tough shit, yeah?
It's just I notice I'm lost, and that's already an idea, and then it's, I don't know, I try to get back, but I'm already done then.
Yeah. Well, you've got to somehow inquire more into this I, you know, because unfortunately you're still, I think, pretty much completely identified with your with your I, your ego, somebody, and somehow you've got to soften that. You've got to get some understanding, you know. And the way you're talking, that, you know, in every spare moment, Govinda is trying to stop Govinda's mind. It's like one part of the mind trying to stop the other part of the mind. That doesn't really work. It will never work, and therefore that's probably why, you know, not so much is changing for you. Sorry.
I wouldn't say I'm trying it all the time. I had basically weeks where I didn't try to use any technique or anything special. Where I just you know, like, just didn't have any idea of trying anything particular. But still,
What you attend the meditations. So in these meditations, come to the place that doesn't change. You know, come to this place that doesn't change, you know? And become very familiar with that, the place that doesn't change, right? And then when you're out in the factory or whatever, right, try to allow that place that never changes to be there.
Yeah, I mean, it sometimes bubbles up, but it's completely spontaneous. Yeah? It's right, like not I was doing something.
Yeah. Usually it will be happening by itself in a kind of spontaneous way. So if you can stop the other part that you're doing, which is not really helping, you will probably find it's going to be more spontaneously there than it has been before.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, the beautiful thing is that, you know, our essence is always been and always will be that doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, nice you're saying it.
I mean, Papaji used to say something that used to drive me potty in those days. He used to say, if you say you're free, you're free.
Yeah, I need to be careful about that, because you remember maybe that I tried to do this in the beginning when I came.
I don't remember, but it has to be, these words have to have some content, you know. You can speak them out of the mind, it doesn't work, you know. But if it's coming from a deep place, then it gives you some chance to stay there.
Yeah, yeah, it must come from deep.
And, you know, the fact that you are very sincere is a big plus for you. So take this part of you that's very sincere. Trust that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if there's somebody else.
Cornelia?
Can you hear me? It's all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Can hear you well.
So I know an old lady, she's about 93, and she has never meditated, but she is so present, she has no problem. And she is always here. She don't talk a lot for the past or future. But she just see everything here. And that's really good to see that without meditating.
Well, maybe she doesn't meditate in the way of, you know, sitting with her legs crossed behind her ears, you know, and doing some kind of whatever. Maybe she doesn't meditate like that, but I don't know what her life has been. It could be that, you know, in some natural way she meditates actually. What is meditation? You know, meditation is about simply being present, actually, to be quiet. And maybe when she's 93, she could potentially have had 25 years of sitting and not doing very much. You know, maybe she's got a beautiful garden where she sits under the apple tree and watches the birds flying around or something for hours every day. And that's actually maybe a meditation. So maybe she's not formally meditating, but maybe in her life, she's been living a kind of natural life of meditation. Is that possible?
Mm. Yeah, it's nice to see that.
Maybe you talk to her a little more about her actual, you know, what kind of life she's had, you see. I remember, I have a nice story from my time in Lucknow. When I first came actually to Lucknow, I was staying in a hotel, and in the evening we'd go and sit out. It was very hot, of course, so we'd go and sit outside in the evening and have a glass of something, and I would meet a few people and we'd talk. And one evening I met an Australian guy, and he was alone. He'd come to Lucknow alone. And he told me, well, I've come here to meet my friend because I have an idea my friend will be here in this community because he's very interested in spiritual stuff. And then anyway, we got talking more, and it turned out that he lived in Fremantle in Australia. Fremantle is a fairly small town right on the left side of Australia. So that's the west side of Australia. Fremantle. And Fremantle is a yachting center. And his job was making sails for yachts and repairing sails for yachts. That was his life for many years. He's a fairly older man, and he'd been doing this work on yachts for many years, making sails. And of course, when he would repair a sail or make a new sail, he would put it on the yacht, and then he would take the yacht out into the ocean to test his work. Yeah. So he spent many hours, many days alone, sitting on boats, sailing boats out in the ocean, with the whiteness of the sail and, you know, the wind and so on. So when I was talking with this guy, he wasn't spiritual at all. He was only interested to meet his friend. He wasn't interested in coming to the meeting for any sort of spiritual reason. He was completely not interested. He wasn't not interested, but I mean, he didn't have an interest. And at the same time, as we sat and talked and got to know each other, I had a feeling, wow, this guy is really, really quiet. And I figured that his natural life as a sailor, he had actually become very, very quiet just naturally over many years. And then the next morning he went to the Satsang meeting. And when you first came there was a special row of seats, maybe 5 rows back from Papaji, so that you've got when you first came, I think for 3 days, you could sit quite close to Papaji, you know, because there were a lot of people, and later you might have to sit quite a distance. So he was sitting in these newcomers' seats, and of course in those seats Papaji could have a very clear feeling of those people. Anyway, after some time in the meeting, he called this guy. Hello, you know, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Australia. Come and sit. So this guy came out and sat in front of Papaji, and lo and behold, he exploded. He completely exploded and laughing like a crazy idiot. Yeah. And I think I don't quite remember, but I don't think I ever really talked to him again. But I was left with that sense that his years of working as a sailor had brought him inside very, very peaceful, very much in contact to his true nature. And with, Papaji's ability, woof, he popped. He popped. I don't know what happened to him after that. I don't think he found his friend, if I remember. He didn't find his friend, but he found something much more profound than his friend, because he found himself.
Yeah. What I know about the neighbor, she had a very sick man, 70 years, who has a Darmverschluss. So he was very close to death. Several times in the year. Perhaps this, I don't know.
I'm sorry, but I don't quite understand. Could you repeat it, or maybe you could say it in German, and Radha could translate for me. I don't quite understand.
Sie hatte einen sehr kranken Mann, der 70 Jahre Darmverschluss immer wieder hatte. Also ein paar Mal im Jahr. Vielleicht ist es das, weil sie nahe den Tod sah, irgendwie, dass sie mehr präsent war.
So she had a very sick husband.
I can't hear you, Radha, a bit louder.
She had a very sick husband.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Who had for 70 years problems with its intestinal obstruction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe because of this, because there was a feeling always being close to death.
Right. Because he was sick over a longer time.
70 years, yes. 70 years.
He was sick for 70 years?
Yes.
Almost his
Several
whole
times close to death.
I think I don't understand, Radha. Can you explain?
Hatte immer wieder Darmverschlüsse und sie musste wickeln und nächtelang in warme Wickel machen. Also er war nahe am Tod jedes Mal.
So he always had again this intestinal obstructions, and she needs to make kind of bondages for him every night. So he was very close to death for a long time.
For 70 years?
Yes.
Wow. Well, that's a very intense situation, of course.
Mm.
And I mean, I don't have any experience of that, I must say. But if you live so much close to death for 70 years, then somehow probably you're not so interested in the past anymore.
Mm.
It's like when you have this sense that tonight might be my last night, probably you're not so interested about what happened with, at your best friend's party last week or something. It's like not really interesting anymore.
Mm.
So you were his wife, I guess, were you? Is that the situation?
It was her husband who was close to death.
It was your husband?
No. Their husband.
Whose husband?
From the neighbor, 93 years old.
The woman that you just told me about, it was her husband.
Yes, that's right.
Well, okay, so there you are. That's more or less what I was guessing, you see, because if she was looking after her husband for 70 years and every night he was close to death.
Not every night.
Not every night. Okay, well,
no.
many nights, years, then probably in their relationship, they didn't spend their time gossiping about what happened, with grandma's birthday party or something, I mean, it's like somehow that daily kind of trivia becomes less interesting, I think.
Yeah,
and probably if they were 70 years together, that's a very long time, there was an incredible reservoir of love between them.
Yes.
Because probably you don't choose to stay with somebody who's so sick for 70 years unless you really, really love that person. You know, there was a strong bond between them. Yeah.
Yes.
And
They had
so,
a nice marriage.
sorry?
They had a good marriage.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
they must have done.
A relationship.
I mean, in that very, very difficult situation, for her to stay in that situation for 70 years, then they must have been a very strong bond between them. And life is a bit strange. You know, often people who have some kind of, how can I say, people who have some issue, health issue or physical issue, there is some kind of trade-off. It's like in some sort of natural way, God gives some other thing, you know. So she looked after her husband for 70 years, and now she's 93 and very, very present. So she got an enormous gift out of that situation.
Seems so, yes.
And then you're the neighbor, so you also got a gift.
I was the neighbor when I was a child. Yes.
Sorry?
I was the neighbor when I was a child.
Oh,
Not
when you were
yet.
a child.
Yes.
What age were you when you were the neighbor?
10 years.
10 years old. Anyway, this is something you still remember. So probably going to sit with this old lady of 93 and feeling how present she was somehow touching you as a 10-year-old little girl.
No, I see her still.
You still see her?
Yeah.
Don't quite know how this works. I mean, how old was she when you were 10 years old? I mean, she must have been, I don't know, 20 or something.
No.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting it wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry. You're not that old. Sorry. But anyway, I mean, okay. So, I mean, what I was suggesting was that you also got a gift. And if you're still seeing that woman, she has also been in your life. So from this situation of being with her husband, she gained something like a natural meditation. And from her presence, you also have the value of having a neighbor who reminds you to be present.
Yeah.
And that's a gift, you know, that's very beautiful because somehow we all need some kind of reminder.
Yeah, it's nice to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very nice, yeah. And is she still healthy at 93?
No, she has a lot of pain in the body.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And have we met? Did I meet you here in the house?
No, in India.
No? This is first.
In a satsang. When you gave satsang in India.
Oh, in India?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
4 years ago.
4 years ago, okay. Yeah, we have people that meet me and then they don't come back again for 10 years, you know, so you're quite quick. 4 years isn't so long. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, anything else out of that situation?
Well, it was still, and sometimes it comes feelings up, and then it goes down and up and down. I'm not stabilized, so that's my problem. Now I'm a lot in anger and tight drop, but
you're
I
in
think
anger. And what?
Tight drop
and
anger.
Yes.
I think I have,
Wenn,
for
wenn,
me,
wenn es
it's
einfach
not,
ist, kannst du in Deutsch sprechen.
ja, also für mich ist wichtig, dass ich die Gefühle nicht wegmache und einfach ins Leere gehe.
For me, it's important if that I don't push away my feelings to go into the emptiness,
Sondern durch die Gefühle durchgehen.
so
Also
instead of going through
nicht
the
einfach in die Stille gehen, sondern und wieder verdrängen, sondern einfach das fühlen, was da ist, denke ich.
not only to go into the silence and not to suppress the feelings, so going through the feelings, so feeling the feelings.
Yeah. I mean,
What do you think?
the true silence comes out of completely accepting whatever the feelings are. You know, if you completely accept your anger, then fairly quickly it will change to some other emotion, maybe. Then it will change again, and then maybe then it comes to silence. You know, it's like a natural thing that happens.
Mhm.
So you shouldn't
Yeah.
ever try, you should never try to stop the feeling, because then you're fighting against the feeling. If you remember in the beginning this morning when we did this kind of guided meditation together, I was several times mentioning, don't try to change anything. You see? Because when we allow what is there to be there, then it anyway changes. It always changes, quite quickly even.
Ja, im Moment fühle ich mich einfach aufgewühlt.
And right now, in the moment, I feel like a bit stirred up.
I feel what?
Stirred up.
Stirred up, yeah. Good.
Ja.
Yeah, be stirred up. That's good, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so quiet now at the moment.
It's okay. I mean, part of my work is to stir you up, so that's good.
Okay. Fine, thank you.
Especially when it's taken 4 years. So I have to stir a lot today because I might not see you for another 4 years.
I was watching on the TV or your talks
Right.
at the internet.
Okay.
Yes.
But probably you can understand that watching on the talks is a little bit safe, you know?
No, I have a Satsang teacher here in Switzerland, in Winterthur.
Oh, you do?
I go there every week.
You go to him every week? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that Mooney or is that somebody else?
Nishkama.
Huh?
You know Nishkama? She comes to India often.
Nishkama?
Nishkama.
I don't know. I don't think I know Nishkama.
No?
Does he come to Tiruvannamalai?
Yeah, very
Okay.
often. Yeah. And she gives satsang here in Winterthur.
Okay, good. Well, it's good to have somebody that you can visit regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to be an extra, don't worry. I can be the cherry, you know, on the top of the cake.
Yes, that's right. But you're far away in Köln. You're far away in Köln. So
well, I'm not far away anymore because now I'm going to do regular meetings like this. And, you know, it's a bit more personal than the old meetings, you know, because as you say, you could watch my meetings, but not really expose yourself. But with Zoom, it's more intimate, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
So I see. I'm looking forward to see you again.
Good. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, anybody else like to have a talk or whatever? Seems like I didn't stir things up enough.
Kashi is there.
Okay.
I find it on my work outside in the elderly home where I'm cleaning, very difficult to be really present because I have make a huge tempo. There is a big pressure that you have to do a lot in a short time. And I find it really difficult to be really present then. But perhaps I have to make a click in my mind. But I have to do a lot of rooms and go on and on and on. And that time pressure, yes, I find difficult to deal with.
Well,
and I feel like become more robotic. You know, you get a routine and yeah.
Right, right. Well, you know, this work situation may be kind of feeding into your one of your tendencies, which is that you don't value yourself, you know, and maybe in whatever time you have, instead of doing 10 rooms, maybe you can only sensibly do, 7 rooms or something, and you need to tell the people that are managing that you need somebody to help you, you know. You assume that you're not quick enough, and then you put pressure on yourself to be quick enough, then you can't really have much fun in doing what you're doing, and you can't, as you say, maybe you can't be so present because you're always rushing to get the whole thing completed. Yeah, it's like a race, you know, you're running a race every day.
Yes, because I have 5 colleagues and they all do it, so I find it difficult if they always have to help me.
Well, maybe you're older than your colleagues, you know, and maybe you have to say to yourself, well, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
And if it happens to be a bit less than somebody else, doesn't mean that you're somehow less than somebody else, you know.
No, that's true.
It's never a good idea to live in a kind of competition with everybody else, because if you look around, there's always somebody who's quicker or stronger or more clever or more artistic or something. You are who you are, you know.
Yeah.
And the important thing is to completely accept that who you are and live your life as who you are. And maybe that's just not the right situation for you.
No, it is not a very healthy situation that I can feel in this kind of job.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't remember what we really decided, but I think the community was actually talking this week about you not doing that job, or only doing, doing less hours of that job.
Yes, I talked about my work, and perhaps I can do 5 hours less a week, but I'm not even not sure about that.
Right.
So we will see.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when we started out with this working program, you know, a month or so ago, I mean, we really needed to do these jobs, but the way things worked out, we don't need to do so much of those outside jobs anymore.
Yes.
So, you know, you should talk to whoever.
Yes, I talked already with Radha.
Right. Okay. But, you know, you have a tendency always to judge yourself that, oh, the other 5 people, they can all do it and I can't do it. So there's something wrong with me and I have to go faster or something.
Yes, but I notice a kind of, you know, my colleagues are in the beginning very willing because I'm quite new to help. But then there is a tendency that they also have to do a lot. And then it becomes more difficult for them that they have to do even more because, or that they have to wait for me. So that is what and to be free in that I'm not quite, no.
Well, I can see it's not an easy situation for you, and it's easy for you to make judgments against yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this situation is a chance to look at something.
Yes, I see a lot of structures.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So we still have a bit of time. So if anybody else would like to...
We have Maha and Vishnu.
Okay.
Actually, no topic. Just wanted to show my face.
Okay. So that your face indicates that you're quite quiet. And amazingly, because I have some issues about relationships, but I get the feeling that you're very good together after being locked up together for, I don't know, 2 months now. Must be very difficult.
Yeah, it's a kind of magic. This relationship, it's different from every relationship I ever had. It's more one mind. Like there's no Maha. That's all one.
Right. All right. Well, Maha means, I think Maha means great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite actually it's quite interesting because it's such a long time now that we're spending so much time together, and stuff is coming and stuff is leaving or going, and it's quite easy always.
Yeah, well,
feels like a big flow.
I mean, one of the qualities which I, of course, admire in relationship or in couples is when you have some kind of similar decision, similar interest. And I think when you maybe came together in the beginning, you had maybe a stronger interest about things like this than Maha had. I don't know, really. She was a therapist, so probably she was always interested. And she came to India, and as we all know, in India, she was only able to stay for part of the time. And but by the time she left, she was like a light bulb. Yeah, she just kind of blossomed amazingly in quite a short time. And so she was clearly ripe for hearing what she heard and being together with you. And it's lovely that that's continued.
Well, actually, to be a little bit nasty, it changed quite quickly for her because she got sucked in. But we talked a lot, and
sorry, what changed for her?
She got sucked in her family situation, and
after India.
Yeah, after India.
Right.
And but we talked a lot about it, and I think, in my opinion, she's shining again after since 2 weeks or so, something like that. Again, like an angel.
Right.
So it's getting more permanent.
All right. Well, it's nice that you're clearly very good for her.
Yeah, and she's for me.
You too, So
yeah, it's quite
they're shining together.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. Well, and actually, I'm quite curious how this is possible, but because I've never experienced it and I never heard about it. But it's there's actually it's possible to have a relationship without destroying each other every day.
So I'd like to say something to you, because tonight we're going to watch a film, but actually I'm offering two different films. And at the end of this meeting in a minute, Radha will ask, will make a list of who gets which film. Yeah. So the people who are kind of guests or newly in contact with John David, we're offering them the film that we made 2 years ago called The Pointless Joy of Freedom, which tells a bit about John David. And then most of the film, 2/3 of the film, is going through you can say the teachings or the issues that almost everybody has, the main issues, you can say, in humans' life. And we all think that this film is rather good. It was made by a number of people together in the community. And so we're offering that film to people who haven't seen it or only seen it once. And then we have another film which the community here was watching recently. And this film was made about Nisargadatta Maharaj. And there's a man who, when he was young, actually visited to Maharaj in Bombay and stayed for some time. And now, I don't know, maybe 25 years later, something like 25 years later, he's gone back to Bombay with a film crew, and he's put together a very beautiful film about Maharaj. And part of that, they're interviewing, for example, the man who used to translate for Maharaj, who was very close to Maharaj, and various other close disciples they interview. It's quite interesting. And I think it was the last people they interviewed was an Indian couple, probably, I don't know exactly, in their 60s maybe, not so old, but older. And I was very, very touched from this couple because they were, both of them, talking about Maharaj and their own experiences with Maharaj. But they were on one hand very independent of each other. They had their own very strong opinions, which they both had no problem to share with the interviewer. And at the same time, all the time, you could feel this very beautiful connection that they had together. So you might watch out for that at the end of the film, because it's quite touching, actually. And of course, this is a possibility. And I think they probably, I don't really know, I'm projecting a bit, but probably they had come to Maharaj when they were both quite young and maybe independently, and then maybe had met and became married and so on. I don't know really. But clearly they have the same deep interest,
Yeah, and without it, it's not working.
Sorry?
Without going for the same interest, it's not working.
Well, many people try to make it work, They try to make it work, but I don't know if it can really work if one person is not interested and the other person is deeply interested to come to their essence. I don't know. Probably not really work.
This was from the first day of this relationship. This was always clear for me that right now I'm getting maybe into trouble to saying this, but it always coming the path is coming to myself is first. And now we do share this, and that's pretty nice. Yeah, it's amazingly beautiful. But if it would change, my decision would be clear.
Yeah, well, enjoy it while it's there, because it's, as you say, it's very, very beautiful when it really you can be present together. That's very lovely. Okay, maybe we're almost going to stop. Anybody else has a strong feeling to share something? Okay, so then I think Radha will come in a minute, and what we're going to do actually is to send you a link to the film, because in that way you'll get a better quality. If we put it through Zoom, apparently the quality is not so good. So you'll each get an email with a link to one or other of the films, and we're suggesting you start around 8 o'clock. So it's 6:45 now, and then together we'll come together again at say 9:45, 9:45, and we can have a little bit of sharing together. So as you watch these films, you might want to make a few notes, and so we get a kind of lively discussion later in the evening. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.